Happy Wednesday, everybody. My name is Scott Morganroth, the Motor City Madmouth. This is the real and the rare. And I am pleased to be joined by my special guest, Trent M. Clark. Relating about Trent M. Clark. This guy is an author, and he's been around baseball a while. So over the next 30 to 45 minutes or so, we're going to give you a lesson on leadership. And look at all those rings that this guy likes to flash around. Good stuff. Well, Trent, welcome to the real and the rare.
Thank you, Scott. Always good to be with the Motor City Madmouth. I'm telling you, like, there's no place I'd rather be on the hump day.
Well, I'll tell you, we have it, man. This is our time to go out there and shine. And I know you have a lot for people to go out there and be educated about. Let me give you a little bit of an overview about Trent, okay? He's got a book out there that talks about leading winning teams, how a team works, and motivation and strategy to achieve big league success. And he's flashing it up there. So by the end of this show, I hope everybody will have an opportunity to reserve their copy as well. It's a good book, and there's no way that when you have some of these books out there that if you can pick up a few things out there, then you can definitely learn a lot and be a lot smarter with it than you would be without it. So with that said, Trent, why don't you give the audience a background information about what you've done in baseball and whatever else you've been, and then I'll start asking you some questions about the book, all right?
For sure. You know, my background is athletic all the way. Grew up son of an entrepreneur, and two of my passions, right? Sports and entrepreneurship. And I played a lot of sports in high school, played 2 sports at a Division I school in college, and then went on to a career in coaching in pro baseball for over 13 years. Got a chance to coach at Michigan State with Coach Saban, Coach Izzo, and a bunch of Coach Mason, the hockey coach at the time. Fabulous group of staff up there, and was blessed, man. 3 World Series along the way in pro ball, and just met fabulous people along the way. But meanwhile, while I was in baseball, my off seasons were filled with investing in companies. I was starting private training companies and building businesses for gyms for people's homes. And I owned 1-800-GOT-JUNK in all of Phoenix, and I owned about 16 franchises there. And so I just kept growing and building. I've started 12 brands now. I've been a long time entrepreneur organization member. So and it just culminates in a book of all these lessons, Scott, along the way.
Well, you can be associated with the likes of Tom Izzo and Nick Saban. You're doing pretty good work. Joshua Dorr says, great to see you, Trent, on here. Okay, Joshua Dorr, obviously, you know, he's a guy that follows a lot of what we do. So as we go deeper into this, how did you get the bug to lead as a kid?
Yeah, you know, as a leader, as a kid, I always was the youngest of 4 in my family. And very early on, I was always playing sports with my brother's friends. So they were 6 and 4 years older. So I learned a lot of things that were coming at me that would come at me ahead because I was listening to their conversations. I'm playing in their games. And I got, you know, some notoriety for being a good player with kids my age when I started playing with kids my age. And I found out it was really easy to play kids my age. Like, it was hard to play with kids that were 4 and 6 years older. And so I learned a lot of hard lessons out on the playground with the big kids. And I probably learned some foul language too. But, you know, I got started, and I was a hard worker, and I started with a paper route. And then they added 3 paper routes on my docket and kept adding streets in my neighborhood. And man, I hit about 7th or 8th grade, and I was being asked to be in student government, and I was being a chance to go out there and go play football. And 3 of my friends would go do the 3 paper routes I had at the time. And I was managing them and paying them $1 a day and making about $5 to do my 3 routes. So I thought I was brilliant, Scott. I thought, like, man, I went and played football. My friends went and did the routes, and I made $2. And I thought, man, I got to be brilliant because I made $10 going to football practice this week in 5 days. And then, of course, I kept the whole money on the weekends doing them all. And so I was in business and realized that, you know, you got to lead. You got to go ahead, and you got to lead in your teams, and you got to lead in the classroom. And I felt like I was built for that.
Paper route. Boy, I'd say I had a few paper routes in my day. Folks, if you know anything about paper routes, okay, and I mean paper routes, we're going back a long way. And when you're back in Michigan, you got that red wagon, and you can't even drive a bicycle out there. Otherwise, you're going to be slipping. You'll never get the thing done before you go to school. I ended my first paper out was with the Detroit Free Press, and then eventually got one with the Detroit News later on, and also the Observer back then. So I can appreciate it. Let's go to the chat room. It's getting busy already. Turbo Jet Bottom says good evening, and Candy Epling says, what motivated you to write the book, Trent? There you go. Keep it going.
Yeah, what motivated me to write the book was I have all these stories. I've spoke. I have been a public speaker, and now I have spoken in over 17 countries.
Wow.
And so I've been tapped on the shoulder to go out and lead into programs and talk about my experiences and World Series championships and that journey of excellence that I experienced from this 11-year period and 7 championships in that 11 years. And so I always have been the speaker, but never the writer. And so I have a top 3% downloaded podcast called Winners Find a Way, and had a lot of fabulous guests on that. And so Wiley Publishing and Wiley Business has come to me, and they've seen that I've been in this business community a long time, and said, hey, we'd love you to write this book for us. And so that got me set up. It was a bucket list item, Scott, that I thought maybe I would do one day, Candy. But man, so when the offer came, it's kind of like having children, right? Like you're never really ready to start the family, but like when it just hits, it's time to go, and here we go. And so the opportunity came for me, and off we went.
All right, Trent, you know what? I ask a lot of my guests this, and I'm going to ask you the same thing. Do you feel that you need to be a good writer to be a good speaker of any kind, whether it's on TV, radio, or public speaking? Because I've always been a firm believer, if you can speak a language and you can write it, you can speak it eloquently.
Yeah, I think they're both two separate skills, but they're both great skills to have, right? And I think that we're losing that right now in our country. We're losing the wordsmiths. We're doing the AI thing, and I think that's helping in a lot of ways and then hurting in other ways. And I think the texting and the quick messaging stuff, people are starting to talk in acronyms, right? I mean, we're speaking in acronyms, and I get the military where there's 470 acronyms or something, but like it's becoming dangerous. And all of a sudden, I think people have forgotten words matter. Words matter how you write them. Words matter how you speak them. And I think we're losing that in our country.
Yeah, and amazingly enough, and when I ask you this, and I know we've talked privately about this, then when I ultimately get involved with public speaking, I've only got one subject, Trent. It's only one, that you have to be a good writer to be a good speaker of any kind, regardless of what it is. And I know with you being a coach that you said that you coached me along the way how to get speaking engagements. But I only need one thing to talk about. I've been living it for 44 years anyway. So again, folks out there, if you're listening, Trent and I are here about to make sure you get as much out of this show or any show that we do going forward. If you can write, you can speak well. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's all about English. I'm going to tell you an interesting story, though, many years ago. When I was in college, that's why I'm wearing my USF stuff, okay? I was actually dating a Japanese girl. I mean, why am I even telling everybody on this? It was a great story. And Paulharvey would say, I'll tell you all of the story and then the rest of the story. How's my Paulharvey? Pretty good?
That's good. And now the rest of the story.
Right. And George Eichhorn, who here is, by the way, him and I did that. We were working back in the day for a sports talk show, and Paulharvey actually preceded us. So I'm over at USF. Awesome. And this girl here is trying to take the TOEFL test. Now, here's the thing. She didn't know nothing about English. She practically speaking mostly Japanese, just enough broken English to get it figured out. Meanwhile, where do you think I'm working? The Tampa Tribune. Oh, what better thing can you have? You got a Japanese girl, absolutely adorable. Her name is Yumi. Oh, she's beautiful. And a guy like me working at the Tampa Tribune. So I'm working all these late hours and all that, come back to the dorm, really stressed out. My back, even at the age of 20, 21, is so stressed out with all that driving I had to do. Let me tell you something. You talk about an Oriental massage. This girl gives it to you pretty good. What did I do, though? I helped her go work through the transition about speaking about the English language. That's where all of this is going. And I said, Yumi, okay, I'll take a, nobody knew anything about Aaron Rodgers. For all I know, he wasn't born back then. But I said, relax. Most of the game of learning the English language is all predicated about relaxing, not overthinking it. So I went over it. I spent as much time as she wanted. I knew what I was getting when I got back to the dorm every night, anyways. And she was a good person, good companionship too, by the way. And you know what happened? Eventually, as time went on, she did pass the TOEFL test. I'm going to tell you, she was so grateful to me. What's the moral of the story? Okay, you know what? We all know you have to really relax, but you have to make sure that you don't overthink, and you have to be able to go out there and understand that knowing English is one thing. Okay, being able to execute it is another story. And it was just one of those situations where, again, if you're a good writer, you're a good speaker. But she came from nothing, but she figured it out as we were able to get her to calm down a little bit and all that. And that's why I wanted to share this story out here, because again, like I told you before, writing to me leads to good speaking, and I am going to be eventually down the road looking to make an income with that precise. I don't need any other topic. I only need that one, and that's it.
Yeah, I think it's really, and how I started speaking Spanish for baseball was learning to read and write it, and that really helped my translation of how I could do it, and that was a great start for me. I mean, and reading the written word was actually, it became much easier to write and read, and really more read than write. That was still a challenge, but learning to read the language really helped the language. It really helped expedite things because you had that visual image as well. But that was great that I could read a newspaper when I was in the Dominican Republic or somewhere else in baseball. That was great. And so the players were always talking in different like dialects as well as slang. That was it. So they didn't really speak like what we would call the King's English, right? So
Right.
when learning to write it and read it helped understanding a ton.
Let me tell you, if I knew what my Spanish skills were like, I'd have a whole lot more easier time with Intermiami, because their head coach speaks Spanish, and I don't know a darn thing about Spanish. There's every time I wish I learned a second language, it's this, especially with Intermiami. When I was covering the Marlins during COVID, they have a Spanish section side and then a regular, so at least I wasn't totally shut out of that. But you know, I think of all the good comments I lost because they had to go Spanish. What am I missing here? Well, guess what? Sick them head. I call myself a sick them head when something goes bad. Say, man, you should have been a multilingual individual. Instead, you're out there, you know, limited to one. So with that said, good to get those stories out there. So with that said, again, I like to use that word twice because it's all about reinforcement. How was the excellence refined for you on your athletic journey?
Yeah, so coming back to where it really started was, first it started with personal development. Like, how can I be the best I can be? And so I was, again, going back to that 4 and 6 year old brother, I had the ability, like, they were going to college and playing sports. And so I was learning what the colleges were doing to train them. And they were bringing that training back to me in high school. So I was getting ahead of the competition from a training and development side. And then meanwhile, in these 11 years and 7 championships, it was just an audit of excellence of why people won, and seeing players along the way like John Smoltz and Steve Avery and some of the best Michigan talent in baseball. There were lots of guys, Matt Miesky and tons of major leaguers back in my day, and so um, it was watching like these players and teams that started winning and why they won and why we didn't win, and when we did win, why did we get as far as we did to World Series and the state championships and all that good stuff. And so it was a journey of finding out and looking in deeply into what was working and what was not working. And what you find is it's a very holistic experience, and that you can't just do two things really well and then the other three you stink at. You've got to actually lift up all of the five, all of the 8 things, all got to come to get better at the same time. And I had a couple of lessons along the way where I just really learned where I was focused on doing one thing and way better. Meanwhile, it was dropping my skill in another area because I wasn't giving it any time. And that was not a recipe for success. You had to holistically work on all of it.
Or did you say that you had the good pleasure of working with Sparkyanderson?
I did.
Tell
Yeah.
me what that was like.
Yeah, so 1993, I signed with the Tigers, and man, I was super excited about going to Detroit, being a Michigan kid, growing up in Battle Creek, and listening to Ernie Harwell every night on the radio. Man, I was with my home state team, and I was 14 years old when the Tigers won the world championship, and Sparky was the manager then. So now fast forward to 9 years later, and I'm 23 years old, going into old Tiger Stadium before they tore that thing down. And I was like, man, I was in heaven. This is just it was every place I ever wanted to be, because, when I was a kid, I knew a little bit about religion, and man, baseball was my religion. I was deep into it. And when I walked into Tiger Stadium, probably the first time when I was about 10 years old, and I saw that green grass, man, that was my cathedral, man. I was like, I'm home, baby. This is where I want to be. And so walking back in there, I kind of set that sight about that time when I was 10. So, 13 years later, I'm walking through, parking in the players' lot at Tiger Stadium and walking in through the tunnel now and seeing Tiger Stadium from a very different angle that I didn't know, of course. I knew existed, but, hadn't seen it. Both utter exuberance and joy, and also in the same disappointment in what it really looked like down there, as almost at that time, right, 100-year-old stadium. It was like, I guess not at that time. It was 1912. So at that time it was 81 years old. Like, it was dated, right? And I was like, wow, that was a real wake-up call. But Sparky was incredible. End of his career. That was his last year because of the strike. And Dick Trzaskowski and his staff were just amazing, and just had the best stories of just their careers. And it was really cool. Learned a lot from Sparky along the way.
Yeah, I had the opportunity to work with Sparkyanderson during spring training out in Lakeland Joker Merchant Stadium. So you also had an opportunity to work with the Cleveland Indians. Explain to me what that situation was all about.
Yeah, so in 1995, strike's over now, right? And so things are coming back online. And Cleveland had offered me a position in 93 when I took the Tigers position. And they offered me their position 2 weeks after I'd already accepted the Tigers. And the position was for more and probably more responsibility, maybe, or, well, probably not more responsibility, I guess, but probably more money for sure. And I felt like I was going to get just a super experience in Detroit. I think the home state kind of thing made a difference to go home. And my sister lived in the Detroit area, so I had a place to stay. We weren't making much money, I can tell you that, either one. But I turned down the offer with Cleveland because I'd already accepted something. I was a man of my word, and I had already given my commitment to Detroit. And they had interviewed for a lot of people. And so I honored the selection and stayed. And so in 1995, another opportunity came forward in Cleveland. This time I took it. It was a major league job as an assistant in the major league team and running the minor league operations as well. And so it was a lot of responsibility. And it was fabulous in the way that, Scott, they had a great budget. They were just committed to this program. And when you think about the areas of like strength and conditioning and training athletes up, the NFL was great, right? I mean, they were incredible, and college football and some of the sports were really good, but Major League Baseball was behind the time. And there were like 4 or 5 teams at that time that put their money where their mouth was and really made a financial commitment to sports. And Cleveland was by far, maybe not by far, but if not the top, probably the top financial commitment in the program. The White Sox were right there too, but they were in it to win it. And, I think it worked very well for them. I mean, they saw immediately on the ROI, they were investing in a lot of things, but, minor league organization of the year, World Series, 2 of the next 3 years, we were hitting on all cylinders. And so it was a really fun, it was a rock show, man. That's what it was. It was like being a traveling rock star with the Cleveland Indians, because they were so good, and it was just a ton of fun, and we were fun to watch. And what an experience. It wasn't all like, unicorns and rainbows, by the way. There's a lot of hard work, but it was a show, man.
Well, let me tell you one thing. Strength and conditioning doesn't get enough publicity as it should when you're dealing with a 162 game season, let alone add spring training in the postseason to it.
Amen, brother.
Man, I can tell you right now, when you wonder about Tommy John operation, we can do other episodes on this. All I'm doing is scratching the surface on that.
Yeah.
So I think that a strength and conditioning coach should get more credit. And eventually we're going to bring Kevin Rand, my good buddy, on down the line, but not tonight for the purpose of staying on course here. But that's something that people have to really take more seriously when you look at all the nature of the injuries that are attributed to not having a strength and conditioning coach. I will bring up one Detroit example that the main most valuable player in that bad boys era wasn't the players or the coach, it was Arnie Kander. And he's the guy that kept the Pistons in pretty good shape. With that said, Joshua Dore, excellent question. Question for Trent. How did you team up with the Mad Mouth, and what do you guys have planned moving forward? Go ahead, Trent. You're welcome.
Nice, Joshua. I love that, man. First of all, that's a great question of how I teamed up with the Mad Mouth, man. Like, how did we first meet, Scott? What tell the people that story about how we came to know one another.
Well, you and I met on LinkedIn, man. I think we had something to do with the Sports Philanthropy Network too, didn't we? I believe
Yes.
that there was a commonality. I don't know how much of one, but I know that we were both linked to that particular organization, which is a great organization because they do a lot of good things. But actually, Joshua, to answer your question, we ended up meeting up on LinkedIn. For a lot of you folks that underestimate LinkedIn, God almighty, please. This is one of the best professional sites you can meet, and you need to get on there right away. And that's why Trent and I. Now, why don't you let the audience know, Trent, some of the things that we do have that we're working on together as time goes on that we do have planned moving forward? You can answer that question.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have teamed up with the Motor City Mad Mouth, and I'm excited to start and begin co-hosting the Motor City Mad Mouth show, which is just, you've been out here, Scott, for so long in the media business and the writing business and sports. And so I'm super excited about that show because I am a guy who takes personal interest stories to heart. You and I love Paul Harvey. We love some of the greats. And of course, we had a great, in Detroit for so many years, learning, Mr. Harwell. And we just have a lot of commonality with media folks. Tim Mead, incredible media person. So I love doing these shows where you really just dive deep into the topics and drive that. Of course, we got baseball stitches. We got 108 stitches, right? And so that's going to be an incredible show to be a part of, bringing my experience in college baseball, high school baseball, pro baseball. And so I'm super excited about joining the crew on that. That's going to be a bunch of fun. And so, hey, I'll hopefully plug in where I can and help out, but just excited to be a part of the Motor City Mad Mouth environment, man, because I know Scott brings the energy and I love that.
Yeah, and you know what? Like I said, I wouldn't take anybody for that show, but that particular show that Trent and I are going to be on will be on the No Filter Network. So while we interview a lot of different people, so what we're trying to do is develop that network so we can work within that network to also try to get some of those co-hosts as well. So, and yeah, Joshua Dore is pretty excited about the fact that there is a new hockey show that's the best on the channel, which eventually you'll meet the guy. His name is Rod Peterson. You'll eventually meet him as time goes on.
Yeah.
Probably most likely on the Motor City Mad Mouth show when we do it. So I'm glad Josh brought it up. I have a lot of people that you're going to meet. We're just getting started. George Eichhorn also said some felt that Lance Parrish was too bulked up. He was, no question about that. But again, you need guys like Clark and Rand to make sure that these guys aren't what you call condominiums back there.
Yeah, and Lance is, by the way, Lance is a great guy, and you never fault a guy for hard work. Always willing to do the hard effort work. And what Lance learned early on when he got really strong, he loved the weight room, and Lance learned that that was one of those things like, hey, you can't do one without the other. So what Lance learned was he did get really strong and he neglected some of his flexibility work. So we went back on him and say, hey, Lance, you got to do this work because it's equally as important to your strength is maintaining your flexibility, maintaining all this because it's going to be injury prevention. And he got that right ultimately in his career. And I was never too concerned about the bulked up, except when he lost flexibility early on. And I think you learn that. One of the things I learned, Scott, going back on this was I bulked up one year. My junior year in college, I picked up about 25 pounds of lean muscle, man. And this is the funny thing when ESPN says, athletes can't gain 25 pounds of lean muscle. Of course they can, and they can do it naturally. We've all done it before. Colleges do it every year with Division I football players. They bring in little skinny seniors from high school at 195 pounds, and by Christmas they're 215, and the girls are falling over them home at Christmas break. I'm telling you, it's crazy. And it's just training table and training and doing it right. The challenge I made the error of was picking up that 25 pounds, and I neglected to maintain my running patterns, my sprint work. And of course, that's easy to do when you play in Detroit and Toledo and winter places, because in the winter months, it's hard to get outside. So you got to get inside the gyms. You got to get in the inner tracks, the inside tracks. And I had neglected it. And man, when I came out in spring, shin splints, I got stress fractures in my shins, ultimately in my tib and fib. And, couldn't carry the weight. I had to drop about, 10, 11 pounds just to go back. So everything I'd worked for, I made the error of neglecting one part of that was so crucial.
Okay. All right. So tell me, why was entrepreneurship such a draw?
Entrepreneurship was such a draw because when you're an athlete, you become a hyper learner. And you get so good at learning quickly because you have to take in the information, adapt it on the fly, and you become successful, right? We watched like Scotty Scheffler in the Olympics the other day. Scotty comes in, he's having a couple tough rounds, and then he goes like, 9 under the last day to win it? I mean, he makes his adjustments. He's one of the best at making those adjustments on the fly, and he stays right there, and it's incredible. Man, the thing about entrepreneur, it's competitive. It's relationship, it's hyper learning at the 400 level, and it just fit what I wanted to do. I think the other thing, Scott, that I learned about, maybe I had to do entrepreneurship because I was a bad employee. Maybe I was just crap at being an employee because I wanted to change things and fix things and make them better. And everyone's like, "Hey, kid, why don't you just stay in your role and stop trying to change the world?" And I was like, "Man, we got to go." They weren't moving at my speed.
Maybe that's why we get along so well. We're both hyper learning. And if somebody gets on my way, I end up becoming the raging bull. Maybe I went to the right school, University of South Florida Bulls. There's a method to all the bull madness I have on here between this, and the ring. Hyper learning is a good term, folks. If you have a pencil and paper, go out there, write down hyper learning. We probably all qualify that at some particular point. So let's go to this. So there you go. Put that
hyper learning right there, man. I teach you exactly how hyper learning works right there.
There you go. Well, you'll be seeing a lot on all the different shows that we're going to be working on together. As Karen Carpenter would say, God rest in peace, Karen Carpenter. We've only just begun, but you don't want to hear me singing, otherwise bring out the Memorex class. So whatever. Yeah. All right. So who are the most influential folks in your athletic career?
The most influential people in my athletic career were always my coaches, right? I mean, they were the people who loved on me in ways I didn't always understand, right? There was a lot of tough love along the way. And man, I remember thinking like some of these coaches, man, they are just hard on me, blah, blah, blah. That SOB never gives me a break. Like they saw the potential in me and never let me rest on it. They never let me rest on my laurels. And so, there were these relationships that I really didn't always love in my life and then came to really respect and admire later. And man, Daryl Davies was one of those coaches that was just really stuck out. Certainly Stan down in the University of Toledo saw something in me that, most people didn't. And I was I always had, those guys, and they became advocates for me. And, a lot of people talk about, Scott, it's all who you know. Oh, pro sports is all who you know. Well, really, it's who knows you. Because, Nick Saban knew me, and he knew me to be a hardworking guy who would go through the wall and do what needed to be. He knew I was a winner that would find a way to win. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how I would do it. I wasn't the biggest. I wasn't the fastest. I wasn't the strongest, but I'll find a way to win. And he knew it. And so when I asked him as a reference, he went out and put his name on the line for me. And when you got guys like that who will stand up for you, and I use the example when I interviewed with the Yankees, I knew George Steinbrenner. He didn't know me. So if Mr. Steinbrenner doesn't know me, it's a different interview if I'm walking in the room and Mr. Steinbrenner goes, "Hey, man, Trent might be our guy. He's only 35. He's already been to 3 World Series. This kid kind of knows what he's going to do and can take us and sustain us in the promised land." That's a different conversation if he knows who I am, but he really didn't know. And I knew him and he didn't know me. So it wasn't who I knew. It was who knew me.
Well,
I didn't get that job.
well, I actually worked with Steinbrenner a little bit, and we talked about it before. Yeah, I interviewed him a couple times. I got to mention this story. We're going to a station break in just a moment after you answer this next question, but I'm going to get to the Steinbrenner story first, okay? Covering the Fort Lauderdale Yankees back in the 80s, okay? I know about George Steinbrenner. He goes through managers just as fast as the auto companies can produce automobiles, okay? If you don't believe me, ask all the different ones that got hired and fired. Of course, Billy Martin, I think, was hired and fired 7 times, another story.
Yeah.
So anyways, I knew this going in, okay? See him at Fort Lauderdale Stadium, Fort Lauderdale Yankees. I don't remember who the opponent was. Nobody cares. So I asked him if he'd give me an interview. No problem. He was really cool about it. And then I knew the Achilles heel was, you know what? Don't ask the manager's question quite right away or it won't be a long interview. So what I did is I went out there and politely raved about his farm system. Oh, George loved them minor leaguers, let me tell you. He loved producing them. Rex Hudler said, I want to get the heck out of here. I can't make it up there. And he ripped George Steinbrenner a new backside. But, Rex Hudler is still in the game, by the way, but that's not the point.
Good friend. So, yeah, I know Rex. Yeah. He's 7 years with the Angels.
No, I don't do. I can't wait till all the different people we're going to bring on these shows to really make it.
We got to get Rex on. Got to get Rex on.
Yeah, you let them know who you're with there. Don't worry. We got a lot of stuff. So anyways, I do what I'm supposed to do. I'm a really nice, good young guy. Until I asked the manager's question. I knew I was going to get it. I knew it. We want this amount of time, blah, blah, blah. Talk about all the success. We're done. Okay. But here's the thing. I mean, I'm just paraphrasing it so many years ago. Now, I will say this about Mr. Steinbrenner, okay? Whether you're young or you're old, he treats you the same way. Ted Koppel did the same thing on Nightline. Of course, Ted Koppel, you ever heard of him?
Yeah.
ABC New Nightline, right? Okay. We all know him. All right. Same guy that worked with Al Campanis, another story. Asked the manager's question, boy, did George Steinbrenner light him up too. So here's the moral of the story, okay? If you're going to light me up, at least you lit up Ted Koppel. I don't feel so bad anymore. Hey, let all people be created equal, man. The young guy, the old guy, George Steinbrenner, let us have it. And I wrote about it in my book, and I don't care. George Steinbrenner's in a Tampa crypt, and I'm out here talking about it here on live streaming here. Get it? All right. Good stuff. I'm going nuts. That's how I feel. And I haven't had that much caffeine in a long while. All I'm doing is drinking this drink punch stuff. So for all you people wondering what I'm drinking, don't worry about it. All right, we'll get to another question here before we go to Candy Ebling. So let's talk about your entrepreneurship journey. How much of those influential people out there impact a lot of that?
Yeah, much like, when I went to the entrepreneurial journey, I realized I didn't really have a coach. And I didn't really know how I was going to get that done. And this was, when I started, there weren't all these, accelerators and all these programs out there that were being offered to create jobs. And so I went and I found mentors, right? And I really got into mentoring because people would come along and I would ask world beaters, man. I would ask the top people in business, like, hey, can you explain how you rose to the top? I'll take you to dinner. I'll wash your car. I'll mow the lawn. Like, what could we trade for a service so I could get some of your time and make it valuable? And what I found, Scott, was that nobody really asked the 1%ers how they got there. And I was like, man, I figured you would have a line, 500 people out the door for your ear. And they really didn't. And when they really saw a young person, just like Mr. Steinbrenner saw in you, Scott, like, he's happy to go, hey, man, want to do the interview? Yeah, let's do it, man. If I can help you out, and young man is willing to hustle and get ahead, and he's got the ethics, and he's got the bravery to come and ask him. He's got a little moxie. Right. Like, they're willing. They see a little bit of themselves in that and go, yeah, I'll share. And man, there was just some real key people in my life that, and I look at Coach Saban as a mentor in that way. I coached with him, but he was real mentoring in my life. I mean, he was way ahead of me in coaching and still is way ahead. And it was just cool, man. And in business, I found the same thing. I joined an organization called EO to learn business faster, the Entrepreneurs Organization. And they had a mentoring program with what they called the World Presence Organization. And these were business owners that were over 55 years old, who were usually now kind of not working in their business anymore. And man, they were ecstatic to spend time with these young entrepreneurs and business owners who were trying to figure it out. And they really appreciated, the challenge of trying to run a business and work 18 hours and raise two small kids and still be a good husband and have time to balance it all. And they really admired it, and they really appreciated it, and they could reflect on when they were in that position and going, man, I mucked this thing up, or this is what I did right, and this is what I did wrong. Now, what they didn't want to do is they didn't want to change seats. Like, no one really wanted to go back. Like, they didn't want to come back there and relive it, but they would revisit it for me and walk me through how to do it better than they did it, and give me the good, and they'd give me the bad. And man, so I always looked at it like, if a good mentor would come alongside, the fork in the road would go, and they'd be like, hey, if you're going to go down the right side, there's a dragon down there. If you want to walk the path of the dragon and feel the fire, go ahead. The left side's going to take you a little longer, but you're not going to get burned, man. You will not be singed. And let me tell you, because I fought that dragon, man, and lost a couple of times. And out of pride, I went back trying to beat it again. And they were telling you, like, listen, and if you were a coachable guy, which I was, because I always had a coach in baseball, they loved it. And I mean, for everyone out there, get a coach. It's awesome.
All right. With that said, we need a station break. Candy, go ahead. Take over for about 30 seconds, a minute, whatever.
So you are listening to the South Florida Tribune publishing company, which published a book, and none other than the Motor City Madmouth, Scott Morgenroth, authored it. It is called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Apple, and Google Books. Get your copy today. Go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where you can find Scott's writings, my pictures, a link to his book, and a link to our online store where you can get Motor City Madmouth caps, sweatshirts, t-shirts, or South Florida Tribune's t-shirts and caps as well. If you see that red subscribe button, hit it, like us, share us with all your friends and family. If you like to listen to our podcast, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Monday nights we talk baseball, Tuesday nights we talk football, Wednesday nights and Thursday nights you never know what we're going to be talking about. So tune in to find out more. Back to you, Scott.
All right, Candy, thanks very much. All right, let's go back to the chat room. All right, D. Lowe's, thanks for the kind words. That mouth is mad tonight. Yeah, I can't let you down. More like fired up Florida than real and rare. Well, don't worry, it's real and rare, but I'm in real form. Okay. Yes, the mouth is on fire. MC 44 Mad Mouth. Okay, as in 44 years. Trent, sorry if I missed it. And disregard if you already answered, but what are those rings that you have on? I'm sure you'd be more than happy to show those.
Yeah. There, I got two of them on right there. I got the 95. That's a 97 World Series with the Cleveland Indians. I always love this ring because of the shy, like shaping it like home plate, right? And then that's the 02 World Series championship with the Angels, the only championship the Angels ever won. And the top of the book, I feature all three World Series rings on the cover of the book. So those are the two I got on now. That first ring you'll see here right there is the Cleveland Indian ring of 1995. It's a nice ring. Looks like a class ring. It's not particularly fancy, but listen, after 48 years or whatever at the time, Cleveland was so happy to have hardware. Didn't win the World Championship. Came close, obviously. Lost in Game 6 to those mighty Braves and our boy Dave Justice, who ended up coming to play for us. But what was really cool about that ring that still stands out, and you'll appreciate this, Scott, is that record of 142, because all of the rings have the record on the side, right? So we had 100 wins and 42 losses in a strike-shortened season. So in a major league season, you would have 162 in a normal season, and the record is only 115. Cleveland was on pace to potentially do some damage on that record for best ever. And they lost it because the strike-shortened season started late that year in 95.
Yeah, I remember that all too well. All right, Joshua Door, rumor has that Madmouth drinks a 2-liter Mountain Dew before we show you. Well, Josh, yes and no. I don't drink it after 6 o'clock, but that stuff does sit with me for a while when I nail down one or two during the day. They usually start around 10, 11 o'clock, and they probably end about 4 or 5 o'clock. And for whatever it's worth, okay, I do have insomnia. Not that anybody would be surprised, or sleep apnea. So if I have it a whole lot more than that, you might forget sleep at night. Sleep to me is like a luxury. Okay, it isn't something that I get. I just have to be lucky enough to have the right medications to knock me out, But I call Diet Mountain Dew a PED, and this is a very serious situation. Performance enhancing drink. So, like, I was going to say that with a straight face. Seriously.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. Okay, well, hell yeah. We got a couple more questions to get to. What? Trent M. Clark. And Trent M. Clark will be my co-host on some shows, and he's going to be on baseball. So guess what? You're going to get used to Mr. Clark. And he's like, we have in common, though, Trent. I have towels named after me, but I haven't gotten a damn residual on any of them. And you got bars named after me, and you never got a damn residual on Clark bars. Sorry. Where did it come up with?
How about that, man?
Caffeine, really? I'm going nuts again. And I have another show later. How about that? Okay. More questions. All right. What is the name of your podcast, and why did you call it that? And if you use it, and do you use that name for your book? It's a three-headed monster with a question that will get an answer out of you.
Yeah. The podcast is Winners Find a Way. And I named it that because I love this quote. I was reading a book called The 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's written by Chris McChesney and the CEO of 7 Habits of Successful People. Who's the author there? Stephen Covey. So Sean Covey, his son, co-authored that book. And I was reading through it and studying it, and I come across this quote that says, winners, when shown data that they are losing, find a way to win.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, man, that is the truth right there. And I love, Scott, to surround myself with people that get that. Here's the data, you're losing. And it doesn't matter what the data is. It's really easy for us in sports, right? Because we can see it. And let's just use our good friend Dan Campbell over in Detroit. Dan Campbell comes to Detroit. He's got all these KPIs. He's got all these measurements that he's losing. You're losing. You're not maintaining staff. You're not keeping the best players. You're not winning games. Your score is not higher than the other team at the end of the game. We have all this data that says you're losing. But Dan Campbell says, I'm going to find a way to win. We're going to change how we do drafting. We're going to change how we do coaching. We're going to change how we do practices. We're going to change it all because we are going to find a way to win. And Dan Campbell is the ultimate winners find a way. So I thought that Wiley would name the book Winners Find a Way. I love that name. And we considered going with that for a long time, but ultimately they decided on winning teams, which I love. I love, it's all about leadership. And the thing about Scott, about leaders is that, when people go in and get a position to lead, very rarely have they ever had a chance to go to university or go and be trained in coaching or leadership. Right. If you're in sports, you do get that. But if you're in other areas of business, commerce, music, most people didn't go to get that. And so now that you're going to lead, you got to have leadership skills and you got to have coaching skills. And so, that's the one thing our firm probably stresses is now you got a chance to lead. How did you learn and how are you going to learn now? We do a lot of training on people for that.
Well, you bring up another interesting question. Okay, here's the thing. Okay. How would you describe your leadership style?
Yeah, that's my leadership style is probably a combination of a lot. I am still an authoritarian. I understand that in leadership, I am an authority. Now, I don't lead from an authoritarian's perspective that it's my way or the highway, but when it is time to make a final decision, I have to make that as the authority. And one of the challenges of that is that I'm always operating from a collaborative leadership style. So I want people's input. I want collaboration. I don't want people to think like I do. I've had a lot of people who've come to my organizations and they give an interview, total yes man or yes woman. Yeah, Trent, that's what I think. I think just like you do. And I'm like, hey, if you think just like I do, one of us isn't needed here. And since I own the joint, it's probably you, right? So this interview's over. Because I need someone who's going to bring their thought process, their experiences, their deal to it. That's going to help us get better and get stronger. And so that collaboration is a real kind of key element. But, one of the styles I tell a lot of leaders is that when we come together as a team, we hash it out as a team, and we trust one another in that. And we have to build that trust, but we have to give that trust too. So we hire people that we feel we can trust. We give it, and then until somebody loses it, it's theirs. And so that's a really key element, because when you're in a position of authority, you have to lead. And there's going to come a time where you lead from the example of, hey, we're going to go with this idea, and I don't need your agreement. I just need your alignment.
Mm-hmm.
And, Dan Campbell he works hard to collaborate with his team, but at the end, he's an authoritarian. Like, he's going to call a play. His organization and team and staff have built their plan. And then all of a sudden, what if only 7 people in the huddle agree with the play and say, well, 4 of them go, well, I don't agree with it, so I'm not going to do it.
Right.
Wait a minute. Like, no. We all got to do our role and responsibility on this play for it to work. Well,
Right.
4 of them have decided they don't agree with it, so they're not going to do it. Hey, I don't need your agreement. I just need your alignment. And if you can't get aligned with what we're doing here,
right,
then I'll find someone who can get aligned, because it's never needed. And leadership has to understand that role and also that responsibility.
All right, well, I'll tell you my leadership style, and I'll make sure everybody knows it on this show. If you don't get it, then just go ahead and replay it till you do get it. Number 1, I like to lead by example, and I will outwork anybody on the planet. Anybody who wants to go against me and outwork, go ahead. You can go ahead and contact me, number 1. Number 2, okay, I will crack the whip when I have to. I am not afraid to do it, and I will do it. Number 3, okay, I don't mind petting somebody on the back. Some people need a little softer approach. And number 4, it is my way or the highway. Period. You want to work under me? No ifs, ands, or buts about it. If you want to run the operation, go ahead and do it. But my way or the highway, I'll give you if I have to pat you on the back and be very polite. Some people respond that way. Some need to get kicked in the backside, but nobody will ever outwork me. And I love to prove my doubters wrong. And I'll say another thing, okay? I also like to prove the people that believe in me right. Just like you were in a situation earlier in the show where you talked about Saban. I'll tell you what, there's probably a ton of motivation that you wanted to make Nick Saban look really good because you had his endorsement, just like I have people that had the same way in me. So that's why I asked you that question, because the point is there's a combination of leadership styles, but you have to know what the core of your leadership style is so that you can go ahead and branch off when you need to go out and do it. It's not, as Larry Bird once told me, you have to think 3 steps ahead of the other guy. Life is a chess game. If you can't play life as a chess game, you're in trouble. Checkers will never win in life. SCP, slow down, think, and proceed. Even Kenny Albert of NBC and TNT didn't even know that one. Y'all knew about the great minds think alike, whatever. That's a given situation. But but that's just how it goes. All right, back to the chat room. Okay, now Joshua Dore wants to know about your book. Is there an audio book? You have one.
There is an audio book. Yep. The book will release and ship on August 20th. So you can pick it up on that day. So we're 13 days out today. And so excited about that. I have not heard yet on when they will release the audio, but it is complete. And so I assume they're just finishing up final edits, and hopefully I'll hear when they're going to release that. Historically, from this publisher of Wiley Business Books publishes, it's typically 4 to 8 weeks after the first day to ship is when they launch the audio.
There you go. Okay, George Eichhorn, Dan Campbell has earned so much respect from the Lamb's Place. Sure, they'll run through a wall with him. And Joshua Dore's right. I do run a tight ship, and those that know about it, and those that don't know about it will know about it. But I don't try to be out there just a mean type of guy. But one thing you have to do when you plan and you put together a show is you have to be organized and stay on track as much as you can, because it's so easy to get off and then you get confused. Now, another thing, Trent, I assume you've taken DISC assessment before. I see you placed in the D region. Is that correct? So
I'm an ID.
Okay, very good. Okay, we'll keep to the chat room. Trent, do you think DISC assessments are worth using to building a winning team?
Oh, yes, I do. I think that the more, I think we need to know about our team members, and I think our team members need to know about themselves, right? I'm a believer in the Johari window, and the Johari window talks about how there's a quadrant scale, and there's a X line of others and there's a Y line of me. And then the quadrant up in the top right is what others know about me and what I know about me. That's common knowledge, right? But there's a bunch of stuff here in my quadrant that's hidden. It's hidden about me that I probably don't tell everybody, right? And then there's this top quadrant that others know about me that I don't know about me, right?
Mhm.
And so, like, one, I have to be open enough with my team that I can learn things about me that maybe I didn't know already. And so my mentors have taught me things about me, how I might be showing up, both good and bad,
Right.
that I didn't know, and I was thankful for to have it. Now, a little stingy, by the way, when you find out you're not showing up the way you really want to show up, right? Because, you know, there's always that old adage, right, where we judge others by their actions, we judge ourselves by our intentions. And so, oh, well, my intention is to show up really like hardworking, and well, you're not showing up like you're a hard worker when you're asleep on the couch. You know, like, oh, okay, like, so they don't know that I work 20 hours and overnight. Like, yep. So I understand perception matters. So I think I like taking assessments not only for the team to know how people are, but understand that how you are. So I learn more about self-awareness, and then I know how to lean into people's styles. And so I love Culture Index. I love DISC. I think they're all very valuable and worthy to use. And of course, there's all sorts of different assessments, and I think they all have value for sure. I don't take them as the only metric, though. I would never take a measurement, you know, similar to what I think everyone's kind of lost sometimes in sport, that the data is the only metric. You don't know a person's heart. You don't know their level of competitiveness.
Right.
You can't measure preparation. You know, there's a lot of things that, you know, it's a real challenge to know what's going on inside of people. And I don't think we can ever overlook that. So the more we do learn about each other, I think the stronger we get.
All right, so Joshua Dorr, this is pretty an easy one for you. It'll be on Audible. Did you narrate it? Just give me a basic.
I did not. I am not the narrator. A professional company was contracted for that. And so super excited that someone else is going to do it. And I haven't heard the voice yet. So hopefully it's awesome. I hope, I think they got Denzel Washington probably, but I don't know. Morgan Freeman, but I don't know who it is.
I'm going to find out what Trent did, and I'll have to see if I can modify that as well. One more question for Joshua. Do I have one more? By the way, everybody, the Sports Exchange will follow the real and the rare. Being as though I am illiterate, I am going to wait on the audio book, but we'll definitely check it out. No, you're not illiterate, Joshua. A lot of people are going the audio book because when you drive a lot, it's the easiest way to go out there and comprehend. So illiterate, no. Attention span, a little bit different. I'd probably go along with that. All right, so let me ask you, Trent, what is the one trait these 1% folks that separates them from the rest?
Yeah, that's a great question. And a lot of people ask me that. Like, you've been around all these people that are 1%ers. They've done, unique things in their lives and created more value and contributed in other ways. And I tell you the one thing, Scott, that all the all 1% all have in common is self-discipline.
Mm-hmm.
They don't need somebody to tell them what they need to do. They don't need someone to hold them by the hand. They don't need somebody to wake them up. For all the people who are going out there and admire the Derek Jeters of the world, like, no one ever had to tell Derek Jeter to go out and practice. No one ever had to tell LeBron James, you need to get down to the gym. You need to get down to the park and work on your jump shot. They were already there, man. They were there mentally in their mind. They are disciplined to make the right choices in foods, and they're doing it every day. And when you spend time around them, you see the self-discipline in action, and it's uncanny. And it's a separator immediately from others. And there is and we know it, right? Like in pro sports, you see the major leaguers, you see the top NHL players, and you watch a player down in Cincinnati or Grand Rapids, a minor league hockey player, and you're like, oh my gosh, isn't this kid just as good as McDavid? The separation doesn't look like that much to the naked eye, but when you see them next to each other, that separator, oftentimes the one big separator is that self-discipline.
All right. Well, thanks for the kind words, D-Lowe's, on what's behind me. Great question, Scott. Thank you very much. Just so you know, my future co-host, Motor City Mad Mouth Show, No Filter, is in the house. Okay. So he would like to see you on a hockey show as a guest one day.
Yes.
You up to it one day? All right. We'll
yes, I am so up for that. I love it. And I got my kids played in college, and I'm not a very good player. I love the game.
Listen, him and I are going to be so darn inseparable. It's ridiculous. I'm going nuts again, and I got another show. Am I louder than Dick Vitale? Give me time. Maybe I will be. Who cares? Whatever. You'll get on there, too. Don't worry. We just have to make sure your schedule is in sync with what we're doing. And I'm not talking about the group in sync. Otherwise, you're getting into another situation. But now, Joshua Dorr, not worry about whether he watched the Stanley Cup Finals. All I know is he might watch. Oh, he did. Okay. There you go. All I know is we have the Sports Exchange. Yeah, there you go. There you go, Joshua. You got that answer, too. Now, just so you know, Sports Exchange afterwards. But Trent, the first he lets you go here, we're going to have Candy back for a station break. And then you're going to let people know how to get booked, and then we'll talk about, and then after the show is over with, we'll talk for a moment or two and figure out what's next on our agenda. All right, Candy, just give us a station break. Trent and I will close out the show. Go ahead, Candy. Well done in the chat room, everybody.
South Florida Tribune Publishing Company published a book last November called Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It is written by Scott Motor City Madmouth Morganroth. It is available on Amazon, Google, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, and Apple Books. Watch out for the audiobook later. Go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com, where there's a link for this book. Scott writes articles. I take pictures. There is also a link to our store, so you can get Motor City Madmouth merchandise or South Florida Tribune merchandise. Go get your merchandise today. Don't wait. You can also find all kinds of more great content. But if you like to listen to podcasts, you can find us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Google, Deezer, Spotify, iHeartRadio. We're there. Monday nights we talk baseball. We also talk hockey on Fire Up Florida. Tuesday nights is football. Wednesday nights, you just never know what we're going to be talking about. Thursday nights, you never know what we're going to be talking about either, because that's when I lead the show. You just never know. But you can also, if you have show ideas or you want to sponsor a show, you can call Scott 954-304-4941 or email him at southfloridatribune@gmail.com. Back to you, Scott.
Well, I want to put Joshua Dorr's last topic up there. Well, we got two good ones. D-Lo, great having you on, Trent. Excellent show underneath that. Okay, what do we have? You might have a customer here. Turbo was right on that. Great show. Looking forward to seeing you on your channel and checking out your book. That's what Trent wants to hear. So with that said, okay, take that fist and go out there and let people know how to get it. Go on.
Yeah, go to my website, leadershipity.com. leadershipity.com. You can get that. You can go right to my author page on a bit.ly, bit.ly/Trent LWT, Leading Winning Teams. Trent, all lowercase, capital L, capital W, capital T on a bit.ly. That'll go right to my author page. And you can also go right through it to my Leadershipity page. It'll also got a link right there to the author page. You can buy it there. And of course, we're having a great event here coming up, man. We're going to do the book launch on August 27th. That is a full day of learning. It is going to be an 8-hour event. I am interviewing some of the best people, some of my favorite co-hosts coming along with me to join some of the podcasts I've done around the world. And it is going to be cheap, man. $35 gets you a ticket. It gets you the recording of the whole day. It gets you a live show on the webinar or in person. We're having at Cornerstone. I've got Bloom Growth sponsoring. I've got Healthy Referral sponsoring. It's going to be incredible. And then, of course, you get the recordings of it all, as well as a mini workbook on the pain exchange of how you can get better as you listen on that day, all for the low, low price of $35. And that includes a signed copy of the book. That's crazy, Scott. It's crazy what that offer is. That's crazy.
Yeah, you know what? That reminds me of it, baked potato, but it's loaded. Okay. Oh, that one came off the top of my head. I used to like those loaded baked potatoes. So just in case you're joining us, folks, always watch it again. YouTube, South Florida Tribune, subscribe. And of course, Trent and I, like I said, we're going to call him Trent Clark Barr, and we're going to call me Scott Motor City Madmouth Towels. How's that sound? And we both won't get no residuals, but I guarantee that we'll get a few laughs out of it when it's all said and done. And get used to us being on your screen a lot more often as well, because I'll be louder every single show, and this guy's going to stand there and take it. We're going to have a blast. So again, he's my new co-host, Motor City Madmouth Show, and we are going to be co-authoring a book together. Then if you don't believe us, you'll believe us before you know it, because I don't care what order the names are in. We're both on there anyways, and that's all that matters. We're going to guarantee you're going to be entertained, and you're going to learn. And you can't ask for a whole lot more than that. So, Sports Exchange is next. In the meantime, on behalf of Trent, Clark. My name is Scott Morganoff, Motor City Madmouth. Thank you for joining us on the Real and the Rare. And we'll catch you the next time. Have a good night. See you in the Sports Exchange in a few minutes. Good night, everybody.